Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into salt spray, giant hands, and a diamond valley filled with snakes the size of commuter trains. This is the fourth voyage of Sinbad the Sailor, a man who really should have stopped after the first shipwreck but just couldn't stay still. You'll feel your feet sink into hot, foreign sands, see the sky flicker with lightning, and meet creatures that belong in bedtime stories, except you're in one now. And fair warning, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in Baghdad, again, and you're bored, again. It's been a while since your last harrowing escape from certain death, and somehow that comforting routine of wealth and rest is starting to gnaw at you. The silk cushions are soft, the dates are fresh, and yet you find yourself staring at the horizon like it owes you something. Most people would retire after surviving a giant man-eating bird or escaping a one-eyed ogre with trust issues. But not you. This time, the call of the sea isn't even subtle. You swear the river near your courtyard whispers. You hear creaking wood in your dreams. Smell the spice of distant markets as you sip your morning tea. You're restless in your bones. Historians still argue whether merchants like you were thrill seekers or simply addicted to instability. Either way, you begin packing. You liquidate some assets, because let's face it, you have more Persian carpets than floors, and commission a ship. It's sleeker than the last one, with reinforced planks and a crew that seems competent enough. You tell yourself this time will be different, like every toxic ex-boyfriend with a boat and a dream. As you load goods, fine textiles, copper ingots, honeyed almonds, you try to ignore the older sailor muttering prayers under his breath. He saw you on the last voyage. You'd lost half your beard and gained a 1,000-yard stare. He still signs on anyway. Maybe he likes the drama. You set sail on a morning thick with fog, seagulls screaming like omens. The Tigris River disappears behind you, and open sea swells in front of you like a question you're not ready to answer. But you do anyway. Weeks pass. You trade at coastal towns with names that taste foreign on your tongue. You haggle for dyes, negotiate for ivory, and acquire a parrot that curses in 3 languages. Your crew relaxes. The sun is kind, the water's smooth. You begin to believe your curse has finally expired. Then comes the storm. It builds at dusk, clouds bubbling like furious ink, winds snapping sails like angry whips. Rain slashes sideways, stinging like gravel. You bark orders, trying to keep the ship straight, but it's like asking a drunk camel to do calculus. The sea heaves, the hull groans, and then wood cracks like a gunshot. The mast is gone. A sailor screams. Another vanishes overboard with barely a splash. You cling to the railing until it's yanked from your grip, flung into the churning dark like a stick in a child's bath. And yet, you don't drown. You come to coughing brine, face buried in sand. It takes hours before you realize you're alone. No crew, no ship, just you and a parrot feather stuck in your turban. The island is strange, too quiet. The trees bend unnaturally like they're listening. The sand is hot, coarse, and smells faintly of something burnt. It's not the first time you've washed ashore somewhere unfamiliar, but there's something in the air this time. Something watching. Mainstream historians often chalk these tales up to exaggeration, maritime allegory and traveler's bravado. But one curious record in a 9th century Yemeni manuscript describes islands filled with beings of immense stature who feast upon the flesh of men. You chuckle nervously. You've heard that description before. Still, you move. You're a merchant, after all, and merchants know how to navigate the unknown, usually by pretending they belong. You walk inland, following a faint trail of crushed vegetation and something that might be a footprint. It's the size of a bathtub. Your stomach sinks. You've survived so much. Maybe this time. Your luck's run out, and yet you keep going, because that's what you do. You trudge deeper into the island, every step a noisy betrayal against the unnerving silence. No birds, no bugs, not even wind in the trees. Just you, your squelching boots, and a slowly dawning realization. You're not alone, and this place has been waiting. The ground begins to change. The soft sand gives way to a dense, pebbled plain that crunches underfoot. You glance down. The pebbles are bone fragments, some tiny, some long enough to belong to creatures far too large for your liking. A femur with bite marks lies beside what might once have been a helmet. That particular helmet still has its owner's scalp inside. You freeze. The smell hits next, acrid, sour, and unmistakably recent. You're not in a ruin. You're in a pantry. Then you hear it. Thump. Another thump. It's rhythmic, heavy, getting closer. And before you can even hide, it steps into view. A giant. Not some cartoonish oaf, but a sun-blackened titan. Muscles straining beneath mottled skin. One eye glaring down from a face that looks sculpted by someone angry at clay. Hair like rotten rope sways over its shoulders. Its hands are enormous. Fingers thick and squared. Hands made for grabbing, not for grace. You duck behind a boulder. Your heart punches your ribs, trying to file for early retirement. The giant doesn't see you yet. It's focused on something else. That something else is your surviving crewmates. They're alive. Barely. Huddled in a cage made of ship parts and palm trunks. A few of them whisper, their eyes wide and pleading as the giant approaches. One sailor, a young man with too much faith in optimism, tries to speak. The giant doesn't wait. It plucks him up like a fruit, sniffs, and drops him into a stone pot bubbling over a fire pit. The smell of stewing human hits your nose like betrayal. You gag quietly. Mainstream historical fact? Giants weren't a literal species, but many early travelogues, like those of Pliny the Elder or Ibn Battuta, recorded encounters with men twice the height of others, likely exaggerations of distant tribes or even early misinterpretations of extinct megafauna skeletons. Still, seeing it now, it doesn't feel exaggerated. You slink back, biting your tongue to stop the scream trying to escape. You don't know how many giants are here. You don't know if there's a way off. What you do know, if you get caught, your dinner or dessert. The sun sets quickly on this cursed shore. You curl up behind your boulder, trying not to think about the boiling pot, the screams, the smell. You don't sleep. You can't. You think instead. A plan begins to form. The kind of desperate, wild, probably going to get you killed kind of plan that your friends back home would shake their heads at while handing you a glass of wine and asking, "Again?" Historians still argue whether the stories of Sinbad reflect composite retellings of real explorers' fragmented memoirs or complete narrative fiction. Either way, the ingenuity you conjure next could make either group pause. You wait until dawn. The giant snores in a crude stone hut, one massive foot sticking out like a wall of meat. The fire is out. The cage is unguarded. You creep toward the cage. The few survivors inside look worse than you. Bruised, bloodied, eyes wild with fear and something else. Hope. You whisper. They nod. You explain the plan. Fire, beard, and a lot of running. They don't like it. One of them actually starts crying. You do it anyway. You sneak to the fire pit, rekindle it with dry leaves, and grab a broken oar. You wrap it in cloth and soak it in pitch from a storage barrel the giant clearly didn't care to inspect. The torch lights with a wuff, casting orange shadows across the sleeping beast. Here's the disgusting part. You creep into the hut and get close, close enough to smell the giant's breath, which is like fermented goat and regret. You take the torch and jam it into the beard. It goes up like dry grass. The giant awakens mid-scream, slapping its own head in confusion as flames lick up toward its scalp. The noise is ungodly. You sprint, yelling for the others to follow. The giant stumbles from its hut, flailing, howling, setting nearby trees alight. The jungle begins to burn. You don't stop running until your lungs hurt. You reach the far side of the island, hide among rocks until the sun is high. The sounds of fire and anger fade behind you. You survived! You look at your remaining companions. 3 of them. 4. If you count the one who keeps mumbling to himself about invisible lemons. There's no boat, no food, but you're not soup. Quirky fact? Some medieval sailors believed that giant islands were living beasts pretending to be land masses. The line between land, monster, and misfortune was always thin. You're beginning to believe it too. You take a deep breath. Your beard still smells like charcoal. And already, you're wondering, what now? You sit on a rock, blinking at the smoke-drenched sky, the stench of burnt giant hair clinging to your nostrils like guilt. The jungle crackles behind you, flames still gnawing through brush and palm. Your 4 companions, well, 3 and the lemon mumbler, huddle in a shaky line. No one speaks. You're all just listening, waiting, wondering if the giant will come charging through the trees like a furious roast chicken. But it doesn't. The island quiets again, save for the fire's hiss and the occasional far-off bird call that sounds suspiciously like laughter. You don't stay long, after all. You've committed a kind of arson that doesn't fall under self-defense in any known legal system. So you head inland, sticking to shadows, avoiding anything that could resemble a footprint. The heat is thick, and the vegetation grows stranger the deeper you go. Giant fern-like things loom overhead, their leaves curling toward your movement as if curious or hungry. Then, just when you're thinking, how much worse can this island get? You find the ravine. At first, it looks promising. A narrow valley cutting through the terrain, a stream trickling through the bottom. Could lead somewhere? You go in? You shouldn't. The walls rise fast. Within minutes, you're walking through a stone throat. You can't see the sky. The air is cool, damp, and smells faintly metallic. The others hesitate, but you wave them forward, ever the confident lunatic. You press on. The ground softens into black silt, and the path narrows until your shoulders brush the rock. It would feel like a tomb if it weren't for the water. Always the water, gliding beside you, whispering secrets in a language you don't speak. You round a bend, and then, light, a glowing pool opens ahead, reflecting a beam of sunlight from some distant gap above. It's eerily beautiful. You're about to step forward when you freeze. There's a pile of bones, not human, not even close. Skulls wider than barrels, rib cages taller than a man, and teeth, curved, serrated, each the size of your forearm. You realize with a tightening gut that these aren't remnants of meals. They're victims of something territorial. Your foot slips slightly on the stone. You catch yourself, but not before a rock clatters down the ravine. Silence. Then something stirs. Across the water, a shape slithers from the shadows. Long, thick, pale scales shimmer in the light like old marble. 2 black eyes fix on you, expressionless as death. A snake, a massive one, probably 30 feet long, maybe more. It raises its head, tongue flicking once, tasting your fear. Historians still argue whether Sinbad's Valley of Serpents was a symbolic warning about greed or a garbled account of the real diamond mines in India, where dangers included not snakes, but deadly labor conditions and treacherous terrain. Either way, right now, metaphor or not, you're about to die in a place most maps don't admit exists. You don't breathe. The snake doesn't move. Then, miracle, it slinks back into the gloom. You release a breath that sounds like a prayer. The others are frozen. The lemon mumbler is now whispering to a beetle on his shoulder. Progress. You move again, this time more carefully, and then you see them. Glints in the dark. Tiny shards at first, then clusters, then glittering veins running through the rock like starlight trapped in stone. Diamonds! You've found it. The infamous Valley of Serpents, the place whispered about by desperate traders in smoky taverns. A hidden gorge where diamonds lie unguarded, except for the snakes that nest among them. A mainstream historical fact. The earliest known references to diamonds being used in trade come from 4th century BCE India. Ancient merchants spun stories about deadly valleys and flying rocks, possibly to dissuade others from attempting their own expeditions. Clever. Really. But now you're here. Real diamonds, real serpents, real danger. You drop to your knees, scoop up a few stones into a cloth. Your companions do the same, too scared to celebrate. The weight is exhilarating. Wealth, right there in your hands. But the silence grows heavy. You know you can't linger. You look up. The ravine walls are sheer. There's no climbing out. There's no path forward, only the water, and your only real option, downriver. You bundle the diamonds, stash them in your tunic, and wade into the stream. It's colder than expected, tugging at your legs. The current is stronger than it looks. You build a raft, if it can be called that. Just a few logs tied with strips of your own tunic. Your group climbs aboard. The raft creaks like it regrets its own existence. And then you push off. The current pulls you into blackness. Canyon walls race by, close enough to touch. The light vanishes behind. You're trapped in a stone corridor with no paddle, no map, and a voice in your head repeating, "I could have stayed in Baghdad with my pet goat in a cushy chair." You drift for hours, maybe days. It's impossible to tell. The water numbs your legs, your back aches, and you haven't blinked in so long your eyes feel dry in the damp. And then light, real warm sunlight. You emerge from the canyon mouth into a broad, shallow bay lined with trees. Birds shriek overhead. You made it, mostly. The others stumble ashore. One kisses the ground, another vomits. You just sit. Diamonds clutch to your chest like a man unsure whether he's rich or just tired. You lie on the beach for hours, face to the sky, salt crusting on your lips, trying to convince yourself this isn't another hallucination. The sand is real. The trees are swaying. No giants, no snakes, no burning beards, just the surf kissing the shore and the occasional squawk of something avian and far less murdery. You sit up. Your raft, somehow still intact, rests beside you like a faithful old dog that's been through some things. The others, those that remain, gather in a sleepy clump beneath a crooked palm tree. They're too tired to talk, too traumatized to argue, and really, what is there to say? You've survived a valley of serpents and floated out of a canyon like a sad, soggy cork. There's no therapy for that. Eventually, you stand. Because if you've learned anything by now, it's that idling leads to discovery, and discovery often leads to cannibalism or worse. You've had enough of both. You follow a path through the trees. The forest here is dense but kind, the kind of place where the leaves catch sunlight just right, and vines hang like decorations instead of nooses. You begin to think, maybe this island is different. Maybe this one's just nice. That's when you hear voices. Not guttural giant chants or your own voice cracking under dehydration. Real voices. Human. Arguing over something in a language you recognize, one of the trading tongues common in coastal India. You sneak closer and peer through a thicket. There, setting up camp beside a river, is a group of merchants. Traders, by the look of them. Tents, camels, bolts of cloth, crates of who knows what. One of them even has a tiny lute, slung over his shoulder like a fashionable mistake. You step out, hands raised, smile on your salt-burnt face. They leap up, startled. One drops a pot, another draws a knife. You look like a madman who lost a fight with a smokehouse. But then you speak, and the older one, grizzled and skeptical, lowers his blade. They don't trust you, not immediately. But you produce your bundle of diamonds, only a few, discreetly. Their eyes widen. The tone shifts. Hospitality begins with suspicion and quickly moves into mild awe. They offer food, dates, rice, spiced fish, and water that doesn't taste like moss and regret. You eat like a man who just discovered his jaw again. One of your companions cries softly into a lentil stew, and then you tell them the story. Not all of it, just the highlights, the shipwreck, the giant, the snakes, the diamonds. You downplay the beard fire part. They listen with rapt attention. One man insists you must be lying, but still leans forward at every word. Another makes a sign to ward off evil spirits. And one young trader simply says, "You are either very blessed or very cursed." You nod. You've thought the same. A mainstream historical fact. The Indian Ocean trade routes in the 8th to 10th centuries connected everything from East Africa to Southeast Asia. Merchants spoke multiple languages, navigated without compasses, and were equal parts diplomats and gamblers. You've never felt more like one of them. Eventually, one of the merchants, the loot guy, surprisingly, makes an offer. "We're headed north," he says, "to a port where foreign ships dock regularly. If you come with us, maybe you find your way home." It's the best offer you've had all week. The next few days are strange, peaceful, even. You travel with the caravan along the coast, moving from village to village. At night, you sit by fires, eating flatbread and telling tales. Your companions, what's left of them, slowly rejoin the human race. Even the lemon mumbler stops talking to insects. And you start trading again. Small things at first. The knife you carried since your first voyage, bartered for silk, a broken ring exchanged for a pouch of saffron. Your diamonds, though, you hold on to those. Not for greed, but for leverage. You've learned. You're not the wide-eyed adventurer who once boarded a ship to see what was out there. You're scarred, smarter, slightly more cynical. One night, while camped near a harbor town, a small boy with sharp eyes offers you a carved wooden bowl in exchange for a single story. You tell him about the raft in the canyon, about the cold water and the glittering walls. He listens, wide-eyed, then scampers off into the night. Later, you overhear him retelling it, with added lightning and a talking eagle. You let him have the embellishments. That's how legends grow. Quirky, historical tidbit? In many cultures along the Indian Ocean rim, oral storytelling was more than entertainment. It was a form of currency, a way to exchange knowledge, morality, and survival tips. You've just become a very rich man in more ways than one. Eventually, the port comes into view, a clustered city of whitewashed buildings, dhows bobbing in the harbor, and gulls screaming like tiny, irate customs agents. You stare at it from a hilltop, the salty wind lifting your cloak. And for the first time in what feels like years, you let yourself believe you might actually make it home. A ship waits. The captain is stern, sunburnt, and clearly overcharging you, but he recognizes the diamonds you offer. He doesn't ask questions. He just gestures toward the gangplank. You board. The sea waits, vast and unknowable as ever. You don't say goodbye. You never do. The other merchants wave. The loot guy plays a few notes. The lemon mumbler hands you a beetle. You pretend it's symbolic. The sail unfurls. The wind catches. You are, once again, leaving a place you never meant to reach, chasing the ever-retreating horizon, propelled by luck, regret, and just a touch of madness. And somehow, it feels like exactly where you belong. The ship creaks and sways beneath your feet as the wind fills its sails, lifting you out of yet another strange chapter in the long, impossible book of your life. You stand near the prow, the salty wind teasing strands of your beard, your cloak flapping like you're some sort of reluctant prophet. Behind you, the city shrinks, just another name you'll forget how to pronounce in a few months. Ahead, only sea. You're finally headed home, or so you think. You've done this before. The promise of a straight course, a smooth voyage, a joyful return to Baghdad with pockets full of treasure and a head full of stories. But you're starting to learn that the sea has a twisted sense of humor. It likes to test people, especially people like you. A few days in, it starts small, ominous clouds on the horizon, whispers of strange weather, gulls fleeing inland like they know something. You try to ignore it. You play dice with the crew, share some of your spiced almonds, even tell the first mate a very embellished version of the giant beard incident. He laughs so hard he almost falls overboard. Then the storm hits. Not a squall, not a mild inconvenience. A full, soul-rattling tempest that makes you question every life decision, including wearing sandals today. The sky turns the color of old bruises. Rain lashes sideways, stinging your cheeks. The wind howls like an angry chorus of dead captains. The ship groans, sails snapping, timbers shuddering. Men yell prayers into the chaos, their voices torn away by the roar. You clutch the mast, salt water drenching you, and once again ask the question, why do I keep doing this? Historians still argue whether the frequent shipwrecks in Sinbad's tales are metaphorical, representing the instability of fortune or the dangers of hubris. But you're pretty sure this storm is just straight-up vindictive weather. You lose count of how long it lasts. Time becomes meaningless when you're too busy not drowning. But finally, the waves calm, the clouds thin, and sunlight filters through like a hesitant apology. And the ship gone. You don't even remember how you were thrown overboard this time. You just wake up, face pressed against wet sand, your mouth full of seawater and what might be a hermit crab. You spit it out. The crab scuttles away, clearly judging you. You're on a beach, again. You sit up slowly, your joints aching, your head ringing. The wreckage of your ship is scattered along the shore. Planks, rope, a barrel that somehow didn't sink. No crew in sight. Just you, because of course it's just you. You start walking. Again, this island is different. Flat, wide, with strange red soil and trees that look like inverted umbrellas. The air smells faintly of nutmeg and fish oil. You're hoping for a nice, quiet stretch of land with no monsters or snakes or questionable cuisine. What you find is worse. Footprints, human, dozens of them, crisscrossing the sand in wide, deliberate patterns. And beside them, long drag marks. You follow them, cautiously, every sense on high alert. You crest a hill and see it, an enormous clearing surrounded by standing stones. And in the middle of it, a pile of bones. Fresh ones, some gnawed. You don't move, you hardly breathe. Then you see them, the giants, not like the first one. These are smaller, only about 12 feet tall, but leaner, faster, more numerous. They move with disturbing coordination, and you spot 3 of them sharpening stakes while another turns a spit. Whatever was on it is no longer identifiable. You back away, slowly. Quirky historical tidbit? In medieval Arabic storytelling, tales of giants sometimes merged with descriptions of other othered groups, like foreign tribes or even elephants misinterpreted at a distance. But these aren't misunderstandings. These are problems. You run, again. You crash through the trees, leaping over roots and ducking branches, heart pounding like a war drum. You trip once, scrape your elbow, curse very quietly. PG-13, of course, and keep going. The giants don't seem to follow. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they prefer their meat pre-cooked. Eventually, you find a cliffside path and follow it inland, hoping it leads to shelter. What it leads to is a cave, and inside, merciful shade and silence. You collapse. Your clothes are torn, your shoes barely clinging to your feet, and your beard is beginning to smell like trauma. But you're alive. And that, you realize, is becoming a theme. You take stock of your belongings. One pouch of diamonds, a dull knife, half a strip of dried fish you forgot was in your belt. And a story. Always a story. You chew the fish. It tastes like victory or sadness. Possibly both. You lean against the cave wall, eyes fluttering shut. For now, you're safe. But you know how these things go. The sea isn't done with you yet. You wake with a grunt and a crick in your neck. The cave walls glowing soft amber with dawn light. A breeze teases in from the mouth of the cavern, carrying with it a faint rustle, like silk sliding across stone. You blink, stretch, and for a moment think, maybe the giants are gone. Maybe this island is just odd, not actively murderous. Then you hear the hiss. You freeze. Not a breeze at all. You inch forward, peering out from your cozy little trauma den. The beach below looks calm, almost peaceful, but scattered across the sand like lazy driftwood are long, glistening shapes, coiled, shifting, massive. You blink again. The shapes blink back. Snakes. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Not the ankle nibblers you'd find in a garden, but monsters. Thick as tree trunks. Some as long as a fishing boat. They move slowly, deliberately, sunning their pale bellies on the hot sand, tongues flicking like they're tasting your anxiety. You slink back into the cave. Your brain politely suggests screaming. You decline. The Valley of Serpents. You've heard whispers of this place in port taverns and merchant circles. Men who claimed to have been near it, who drank too much and spoke too loud. A hidden land filled with diamonds and snakes the size of bad decisions. You always thought it was a metaphor, an allegory, a joke. Historians still argue whether such places were based on Indian or Sri Lankan diamond mines, dangerous but not snake-infested, or if they were simply narrative devices to warn against greed. But here you are, and here they are, and beside the serpents, glimmering among the sand and the rocks, are gems, diamonds, huge ones, irregular cuts, the kind that glint dangerously in the sun. They're just there, scattered like candy dropped by a forgetful god. You could walk out and fill your tunic, assuming you want to die horribly, and yet, of course, you start planning. This is what you do. You see a trap, you enter it, you try not to die. You remember a tale, a wild old story, a one-eyed spice merchant once told over pomegranate wine, about a trick used by desperate traders. Raw meat flung into the valley. Snakes ignore the meat. Birds grab it, carrying the meat, and the diamonds stuck to it, up and out. Merchants wait above, chase the birds away, and collect the prize. You thought he was drunk. You now realize he was a genius. You search the cave. Nothing. But outside, on the edge of the forest, you find a goat carcass. Probably dragged here by a snake or dropped by something bigger. The meat's not fresh, but it'll do. You slice it into pieces using your very dull knife. Then, one by one, you press your few remaining diamonds into the flesh. Slick and sticky, you toss the lumps out, scattered across the valley, far from the cave's entrance. Now comes the hard part, waiting. The snakes ignore the meat, as expected, but after an hour of agonizing stillness, a shadow crosses overhead. A bird, not a little one either. This thing could carry off a toddler. It circles once, then dives, talons slashing. One piece of meat vanishes, then another. Within minutes, 3 birds are swooping down, snatching your diamond-encrusted bait like it's a delicacy. You sprint back uphill to a ridge overlooking the valley. There, just as promised. The birds have landed to eat. You rush them. Flap your arms. Shout nonsense. They squawk and flee, leaving behind your grisly jewelry. You collect them quickly, wrapping them in the remnants of your sash. They're heavy, filthy, priceless. And you're not done yet. You repeat the process, again and again, until the sun's nearly down and your hands are slick with effort and goat grease. By the end, your pouch bulges. You've got more diamonds than dignity. You retreat to the cave. You're exhausted, but exhilarated. You survived the snakes. You outwitted vultures. You gamed the system. Quirky tidbit? There's an ancient Persian saying, "Diamonds are for the brave, or the foolish." Tonight, you're both. You sit near the fire, diamonds bundled tight, staring at them glitter in the low flame. You could stop here, really. You could. You could sell these, buy a house, retire, open a quiet date shop in Basra. But something in you knows you won't, because the adventure doesn't end when you've had enough. It ends when the sea decides it does. The next morning greets you like a patient tax collector, quiet, methodical, and full of consequences. You rise with the birds, or rather because of the birds. A particularly bold one is pecking at the hem of your cloak, no doubt hoping for another meat diamond special. You shoo it away, tie your gem-stuffed bundle tighter, and glance out across the cursed valley one final time. Still snakes, still diamonds, still not your problem anymore. You set out inland. The forest is dense, fragrant with cinnamon bark and something like pepper. Your footsteps are slow, deliberate, partly out of caution, partly out of exhaustion. Your body is one giant bruise held together by stubbornness. The path winds up a hill. You crest it expecting more wilderness, and nearly cry at what you see instead. A caravan, actual people, actual camels, actual humans who aren't giants, snakes, or hallucinations caused by fish rot. You stagger forward, waving your arms like a man who hasn't seen a pillow in months. The guards spot you and raise spears, standard protocol for sweaty strangers charging downhill. But you drop to your knees and produce your diamond bundle like a bribe from the gods. That gets their attention. You're pulled into the group, offered water, and asked so many questions your head spins. You answer as best you can between gulps. Where you came from, what happened, why your beard smells faintly of goat and trauma. They take you in, even feed you, lamb stew with flatbread and honeyed nuts. You nearly weep into your bowl. The leader of the caravan is a broad-shouldered man named Harun. He wears rings on every finger and speaks in a voice that could shatter coconuts. He listens to your tale, nodding gravely, and finally says, "You're either very lucky or very cursed." You've heard that before. You agree with both. They're heading toward a coastal city where foreign ships dock, a bustling place of stone towers, bustling markets, and, more importantly, boats that leave. Harun offers to escort you in exchange for a share of your unusual diamonds. You counteroffer, he gets to live near you for the rest of the trip and hear the whole ridiculous story. He accepts. You're learning to negotiate with flair. The journey takes days. Along the way, you learn bits of gossip. A new sultan has taken power in a neighboring land by bribing every astrologer in the capital. A sea monster was spotted near the spice routes, swallowing 2 boats and a goat. And someone, somewhere, has created a portable hookah you can strap to a donkey. You tell your story in return. The giant, the flaming beard, the snakes, the meat trick, the hallucinations. At one point, someone asks if you're exaggerating. You pause, then deadpan. Which part? Mainstream historical fact? Long-distance trade caravans often doubled as gossip networks, carrying tales across continents. A merchant could arrive in Baghdad already knowing which ruler died, which tax changed, and who wore what to which wedding 3 kingdoms away. In this case, you've become the news. Harun introduces you to a strange local custom. At night, under the stars, the caravan shares tales not with words but by drawing in the sand. Symbols, maps, little diagrams that flicker in torchlight. It's beautiful and eerily effective. You sketch out the Valley of Snakes with shaky lines. One child copies it into a leather-bound book. Your legacy in goat-scented sand. Quirky fact? In some early Islamic trade communities, merchants used coded drawings to describe dangerous regions without alarming potential investors. Your sketch will likely be misread in 50 years as land of spicy worms. You're oddly proud of that. Finally, you reach the coast. It's dazzling. The city rises from the cliffs, with gleaming domes and minarets etched in blue tile. The market roars with life. Spices, perfumes, carpets, parrots. You feel almost human again. You check into a traveler's house. You eat grilled fish by the sea. You soak in a bath until your skin forgets the shape of stress. And then, just as the calm sets in, Harun returns with news. A ship leaves tomorrow, he says. Headed for Basra. Good crew. No known curses. Yet. You look at your bundle of diamonds, then at the horizon. It's happening again. The departure is bittersweet. You say goodbye to Harun, whose rings now include one gifted by you. A dull, chipped gem that once shared meat with vultures. He wears it like it's priceless. Maybe it is. You board the ship. It's simple. No gold trimmings, just good wood. Clean sails, and a captain who's more scar than man. He doesn't ask for your story. He doesn't need to. You watch the port shrink behind you. A gull cackles above. Somewhere below, something large surfaces for a moment, then slips beneath the waves. The sea is still watching you, and you are still not done. The ship hums with quiet competence. Sails snap in the morning breeze, ropes creak like old bones settling, and the salty air tastes like possibility again. Mixed, of course, with a dash of paranoia. You've been here before. Sun on your face, diamonds in your pocket, a vague sense that you might finally get home without encountering anything venomous, carnivorous, or mythological. Naturally, you're wrong. At first, the voyage is blissfully uneventful. The captain, called Malik the Salt-Browed, runs a tight ship, and the crew operates like one large, competent family. They don't ask many questions about where you got your bruises or why your eyes dart toward every rustling rope like it might be a serpent. They've seen things. Maybe not your things, but things nonetheless. You settle into a rhythm. You play dice with the cook, who cheats obviously and without shame. You mend a torn sailcloth just to feel useful. You tell a version of your story that's been whittled down to 10 minutes and 3 dramatic gestures. And then the fog comes. One morning, you rise to find the world gray and still, like the sea itself is holding its breath. Visibility shrinks to a few dozen paces. The wind dies. The sails hang limp. You can hear the splash of water against the hull. But everything else is silence. Thick, woolly, unnatural silence. You don't like it? The captain doesn't either. He paces the deck with narrowed eyes and mutters something about the corridor of sleep. You ask him what that means. He sighs. There's a stretch of sea near the Horn of Serendib, calm as glass. Ships get stuck, sometimes for days, sometimes for longer. You raise an eyebrow. Longer how? He doesn't answer, just walks away, sharpening a knife he probably doesn't need to sharpen. Mainstream historical fact? The Indian Ocean is known for its sudden calms, what sailors call doldrums. In the age of sail, a ship could be becalmed for weeks, floating helplessly while supplies dwindled and tensions rose. This part? Completely real, though probably less ghostly. The fog deepens. By nightfall, the stars vanish, and the moon is a ghost behind silk. The crew lowers the anchor. There's nowhere to go, nothing to see, just mist, wood, and the creaking of old timber. That's when the dreams begin. You close your eyes and wake somewhere else. Not on the ship, on land. Always the same land. Black sands, violet sky, and a sea made of glimmering ink. In these dreams, you walk toward a tree that grows upside down, its roots in the air, its branches buried in the ground. It hums when you approach, vibrating with a voice you almost recognize. You wake sweating. The next morning, half the crew looks the same. Hollow-eyed. Twitchy. One man swears he saw his dead brother standing on the waves, holding a clay lamp. Another won't speak at all, just stares into the fog, lips moving silently. You try to stay grounded. You eat dried figs. You hum old sailor songs. You polish your knife. You count your diamonds, not for greed, but for reassurance. Something real, something yours. But the fog doesn't lift. On the third day, a sailor jumps overboard. He says nothing, just walks calmly to the edge, steps over, and disappears without a splash. By the time the crew notices, he's gone. The captain ties himself to the mast. For tradition, he says, which is probably a lie. But you tie yourself to a post anyway, just in case. That night, the dreams change. Now you're walking toward a palace, golden, glowing, half sunk into the sea. Inside is a throne of bone, and a figure seated there with your face. It smiles. Its eyes are hollow. Its voice says, "Not yet." You wake gasping, heart racing, diamonds clutched in your fist like a talisman. Historians still argue whether tales of ghost seas and sailor madness were merely the product of isolation and hunger, or rooted in some now-lost phenomenon. Magnetic anomalies, toxic algae blooms, even rogue underwater gas vents have all been proposed. No one agrees. No one explains the dreams. On the fifth day, the fog simply lifts. Just like that, the wind returns, the sails fill, and the crew erupts in cheers like they've just outrun death, and maybe they have. The sun feels too bright. The ocean, too loud. You blink against the glare, dizzy with light and disbelief. You're alive, again, but something in you has shifted. A weight you didn't realize you were carrying. You don't feel cursed exactly, just marked. Like the sea keeps pressing its thumbprint deeper into your soul with every voyage. You sit on a barrel, watching the horizon shimmer, and think, is this still about trade? Or is this something else now? Quirky historical tidbit. There were sailor superstitions about the seventh voyage being the final one, either a voyage home or a voyage never returned from. You're only on your fourth. You wonder what your seventh might look like. That night, the stars return. You lie on the deck, staring up, listening to the ocean breathe. No monsters, no giants, no whispering fog. Just you, and the diamonds tucked beneath your head like a very uncomfortable pillow. You're still not home, but you're getting closer. Land again! You spy it first as a smudge on the horizon. Barely there. A smudge of green and brown rising out of the indigo sea. The crew murmurs like priests spotting a miracle. Even the captain breaks into a grin, his scarred face creasing like old parchment. The ship leans toward the shore with eager sails. You stand at the bow, eyes narrowed, trying not to hope too much. Hope's gotten you into trouble before. The island draws closer. It's larger than the others you've visited, and ringed by rocky cliffs and jagged inlets. No visible harbor, no smoke rising from chimneys, just thick jungle pressing up to the shoreline and occasional birds circling overhead. Not the friendly kind, either. These birds look like they hold grudges. Still, the crew needs fresh water, and the captain decides to drop anchor near a narrow cove. A landing party is assembled. You volunteer instantly, because of course you do. You have that particular illness, explorer's itch. Also, you want solid ground beneath your boots and maybe some fruit that doesn't come dried and suspiciously chewy. You row ashore with 6 others. The jungle greets you with heat and silence. The trees are tall, the air humid and fragrant with something spicy and slightly rotten. Every leaf seems oversized. Every shadow feels like it's watching. You push inland, following a stream, hacking a rough trail. An hour in, you find something unusual, a staircase, not natural, not worn into the rock by water or time, cut, deliberate, ancient, leading upward along a cliffside, the steps covered in moss and half buried in vines. You and the others pause, staring. One sailor mutters a quiet curse. Another says, "This feels like a bad idea." Naturally, you go first. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient seafaring cultures left stone structures scattered across trade routes, way stations, shrines, even proto-lighthouses. Many have been lost or reclaimed by jungle. Others remain, half swallowed by time and myth. This might be one of them. The staircase winds higher and higher until it deposits you on a wide plateau. And there, hidden in the overgrowth, is a city, or what's left of one. Stone towers lean at odd angles, swallowed by tree roots. Arched doorways yawn open like mouths. In the center stands a ziggurat-like structure, its steps crawling with vines and strange symbols etched into every slab. You step forward, awe washing over you. The others fan out behind you. Silent now, reverent or terrified. It's hard to tell. Inside the structure, you find murals, faded but legible. They depict a civilization you don't recognize. People wearing elaborate bird masks, standing in rows before what looks like an eclipse? A giant eye? You can't be sure. Then you notice the offerings. Scattered bowls, broken figurines, and gemstones, real ones, rubies, lapis, even more diamonds, uncut and dusty, but unmistakably valuable. Just sitting there. You reach for one. A gust of wind slams through the chamber. Doors you didn't know existed slam shut. One sailor screams. Another drops his torch. You freeze. Then you hear it. The unmistakable sound of grinding stone. The wall to your left begins to shift. A panel slides open, revealing a dark corridor sloping downward. And a smell wafts out. Ancient dust, minerals, and something sweet and metallic like blood and perfume. You all stand still. Then someone whispers, "We should go." You nod, but not before you grab 2 stones, because you are who you are. Quirky tidbit. In the 10th century, travelers like Al-Masudi wrote of subterranean cities built by pre-Adamite peoples, entire civilizations that lived underground, guarding treasures too dangerous for surface dwellers. Most scholars called it nonsense. But then again, most scholars didn't fall through a trap door the next second, which is exactly what happens. One moment you're turning away. The next, your foot slips. The floor collapses and down you go. You land hard. Not in water, not in stone. In silk. Miles of it. Fabric. Drapes. Banners. Piled high in what looks like a forgotten throne room beneath the earth. You groan, roll over, and blink at the sight. A throne. Not golden, not gem-covered, but stone, carved into the shape of a coiled serpent. Behind it, a mural glows faintly, painted with a pigment that still seems alive. A city drowning, a ship burning, a lone figure walking away from both. You sit up, breath caught in your throat, and there, beside the throne, is a skeleton, draped in faded royal robes. In its hand, a scroll, preserved by some miracle of architecture and humidity. You take it. You read just enough to know it's not in any language you recognize. But the final line, written in your tongue, as if added later. The sea always remembers. Historians still argue whether civilizations rose and fell along the trade routes of the Indian Ocean long before records began, lost to storms, swallowed by islands. Some say they left warnings. Others say they left doors. You've just opened one. You climb back to daylight, scroll in hand, head spinning. The others have already fled. Only your diamonds remain, scattered in the dust. You pocket them slowly, and you start back toward the ship, because the sea is waiting, and it remembers you. You don't speak a word on the journey back to the ship. The jungle parts around you, indifferent. The vines hang limp, the air still and thick with a silence that isn't natural. It's expectant. As if the island knows you've taken something, and is just waiting. You step into the surf, boots squelching, and climb into the skiff. No one speaks. The sailors row fast, glancing over their shoulders. One of them mutters something under his breath, repeating it like a prayer or a curse. You can't tell which. The moment your boots hit the ship's deck, the anchor's hauled up, sails unfurled, and you're moving. The island slips behind you like a nightmare you're pretending didn't happen. But you know it'll follow you, if not with claws, then in dreams. You retreat to your sleeping mat, the scroll clutched tightly under your tunic. You haven't opened it again. It hums against your ribs like it knows your heartbeat. The days blur. The wind is kind, for once, and the sea rolls beneath you like it's finally offering passage instead of punishment. But your dreams turn strange again. Visions of coiled thrones and drowning cities, of birds with human eyes, of yourself, walking endlessly, always east, always toward something burning. Mainstream historical fact. Many early Arabic sailors navigated using the stars, wind, and even the color of the water. But some believed in memory currents, ocean routes that remembered every ship that had passed, guiding or swallowing them based on intent. Romantic nonsense. Maybe. Or maybe not. A week later, land appears again. This time, it's unmistakably real, unmistakably populated. Basra, your homeland. The familiar smells hit first. Dates, sweat, clay, spiced bread from a street vendor who has probably been yelling at passers-by since your childhood. You disembark like a ghost wearing your own face, diamonds hidden, scroll secured. Eyes scanning everything for signs of danger that never come. You're home. You want to kiss the stones beneath your feet, but instead you smile and walk. The streets have changed only slightly. New stalls, a few buildings where old ones crumbled, but the rhythm of it remains. The noise, the color, the shouting, the faint, ever-present undertone of donkeys doing things they probably shouldn't be doing. You make your way to your old neighborhood. The door to your house is still green, still cracked in the corner, still hanging slightly wrong on its hinges like a lazy wink. You knock anyway, because some part of you feels like a stranger here. The door opens, and there stands your servant, older, slightly rounder, but unmistakably him. His eyes widen, his mouth opens, and then, "You're alive," he says flatly. Again, you nod, he sighs. "I'll heat the bath." Inside, the walls are unchanged. Your cushions remain where you left them. The curtains have been washed. Your favorite jug is now a flower pot. You want to weep at the ordinariness of it. But first, the bath. You soak for what feels like 3 voyages worth of grime. Your fingernails unearth entire ecosystems. Your beard, once the site of at least one traumatic incident, is trimmed neatly by a barber who doesn't ask questions. You emerge a man again, and then you meet your old friends. They gather at your table, leaning forward, wide-eyed, waiting for the latest tale, and you give it to them, trimmed, of course, polished for entertainment. You speak of the giant, the snakes, the valley, the cursed city beneath the island. You leave out the scroll, You don't want to see how they look at you if they hear about the throne. They toast you. They declare you the luckiest man alive. You disagree. That night, alone, you sit beside a brazier and unroll the scroll again. The writing is dense, angular, like it's hiding from you. But one phrase jumps out again and again in your language, carved like a refrain into the margins. He who sails once will sail again. You feel it in your bones. This isn't over. Quirky tidbit? In some medieval manuscripts, travelers who returned home too many times were believed to be marked by the horizon, that their souls no longer fit inland, that they were always looking toward the next departure, even while pretending to be home. You sleep in your own bed that night, but you dream of waves. You try, really, to be still. You spend the following weeks pretending to be a man at peace. You walk through Basra's markets. You sit in your courtyard under the fig tree. You drink sweet tea and nod along to conversations about local politics, grain prices, and someone's cousin's goat that won't stop singing at night. Your body is present, but your thoughts? Always drifting. The sea's rhythm still lives in your spine. The deck still rocks beneath your feet when you close your eyes. You're home, but not at rest. And then comes the knock. It's mid-morning. A polite tapping. Nothing ominous. You answer it in your house robe, expecting perhaps a neighbor with gossip or a messenger with an invitation. Instead, you find a man in expensive robes, too clean, too composed, with eyes that measure like scales. He introduces himself as a representative of a merchant prince in Baghdad. He's heard rumors. He says, "Whispers of your latest voyage. Certain items you may have recovered." He mentions the word scroll, with just enough weight to make your stomach twist. You feign ignorance. He smiles. "Of course," he says, and hands you a sealed letter anyway. Should you change your mind, he leaves. You don't open the letter. Not yet. You know what it says. Money, influence, protection, a request to see what you brought back. What the sea gave you this time. That night, you sit in your study, the scroll unrolled before you, candlelight licking its edges. You stare at those symbols again, the coiling shapes, the water-like script, the phrase repeated like a drumbeat. The sea always remembers. You dream again. This time you're underwater, but you're not drowning. You're walking along a tiled path that stretches across the seafloor, winding past statues of fish-headed kings and giant mollusks with jeweled shells. Above you, moonlight filters through the ocean like gauze. You wake and know. You're going back. Mainstream historical fact. Baghdad during the Abbasid Caliphate was a nexus of knowledge and mystery, home to scholars, traders, spies, and collectors of the strange. It wasn't unheard of for well-funded patrons to seek out object mystics, as they were sometimes called, adventurers who returned from distant lands with artifacts deemed too dangerous or too valuable to ignore. You make preparations quietly. You don't tell your friends this time. You don't host a farewell banquet. You simply load your gold, your remaining diamonds, and the scroll into a secure satchel. You commission a discreet boat, nothing fancy, just a fast one. You hire a captain with one eye, no questions, and a bottle of date liquor that he shares reluctantly. And you head to sea again. But this time, it's not trade. It's not adventure. It's not even greed. It's calling. You sail east, past familiar ports, familiar rocks, past the islands where you once bartered, where you once burned your beard, where you once threw meat to the sky. You don't stop. 3 nights in, you see a light on the water, low and flickering. Not a star, not a ship, a glow beneath the waves. The captain sees it too. He says nothing, just tightens the sails. Men whisper. One refuses to come on deck. You feel it in your chest like a second heartbeat. The next morning, the sea turns strange, smooth but not calm, like oil. The sun reflects too cleanly. Fish avoid your path. Birds fly wide arcs around your sails. You chart a course to nowhere, just following the weight in your bones. And then, late on the fourth day, you see it, rising from the sea like a wound in the world. An island that isn't on any map. No trees, no beach, just black rock and one single spire, sharp as a fang, twisting into the sky. The crew refuses to land. The captain offers you the skiff, mutters a blessing, and turns the ship away before you even step off. You are alone before your boots hit the wet stone. You climb. It takes hours. The rock is hot beneath your hands, the wind howling like it's warning you off. But you reach the top, and there, in a hollow ringed with stone carvings, sits a pool of water, perfectly still. You unroll the scroll, and the water begins to glow. Historians still argue whether Sinbad's voyages were symbolic of a man's quest for enlightenment, or simply wild fiction packed with moral detours. Some say the deeper meaning is about identity, about how each journey changes the traveler more than it changes the map. You lean over the pool. The scroll trembles in your hands, and then you speak the phrase, the only one in your language. The sea always remembers. The water answers. The moment the words leave your lips, the still pool ripples outward, not like a pebble dropped, but like something beneath the surface stirs. The glow intensifies, shifting from silver to deep ocean blue. And then the center opens. Not figuratively, not poetically. It opens. A vortex forms, silent and smooth, like silk winding down a drain, and you stagger backward as a current of air rushes upward from the heart of the water. The spire hums. The stone beneath your feet pulses once, twice, then settles. And the pool speaks, not in words, not in sound, in memory. You are no longer standing above the island. You are falling, sideways, backwards, through yourself. Images strobe in your mind. The giant's teeth, the serpent's writhing, the throne of stone, the mural of the drowning city, the birds circling meat strewn across a bloodied valley. You see yourself, all versions, all voyages, and then others, other yous, 1,000 faces, wearing your scars, one with a cane, one with no beard, one laughing in the jaws of a sea monster, one speaking the scroll's words in tongues you do not recognize. You reel, clutch your head, but there's no pain, only understanding. The sea remembers, because it keeps what it touches. You stumble back to the edge of the pool. The light fades, the water calms, and now it is just water again. You are alone on the peak. The scroll is gone, crumbled to ash between your fingers. The stone beneath your boots no longer pulses. The wind no longer howls. Just your breath and the taste of salt on your tongue. You descend slowly, back at the base. The skiff is still where you left it. The ship is waiting offshore, barely visible, a quiet speck. You row in silence. The waves are unnaturally still. No one asks what happened. Not the captain, not the crew. They look at you, see your face, and understand that something ended up there, and something else came down. You don't speak for days. Instead, you sit at the prow, staring into the horizon. You finger the remaining diamonds in your pouch like prayer beads. Their weight means less now. You dream less, or maybe more, but differently. One night, you dream of a child sitting on the same coiled throne, holding a glowing pearl. The city no longer drowns. It rises. Its buildings stretch like coral towers, and its people wear masks shaped like waves. The child looks at you and says, "You have one more voyage." You wake with your hand on your chest, breath shallow. You know what's coming. Mainstream historical fact. Some early sailors believed that after too many crossings, a traveler belonged more to the ocean than to the land. They were said to carry its voice, unknowingly repeating the stories of drowned civilizations. When you arrive in Basra again, It feels different. Not smaller, just quieter. Like the city understands it can't keep you much longer. You step off the boat, walk home without fanfare. Your servant blinks when he sees you, then sighs and puts the kettle on. He asks no questions. You give no stories. You sit in your courtyard and listen to the fountain. Your boots are still wet with sea brine. You think of the scroll, of the pool, of all the yous who've stood on different shores, speaking the same words, hoping they meant something more. That night, you host no feast. Instead, you send letters to old merchants, captains, cartographers, a scribe in Baghdad with an unhealthy interest in myth. You make inquiries not for passage, but for patterns. Rumors of islands no one can find twice. Ports that only appear under certain stars. Cities whose towers resemble ancient murals. You wait. The replies trickle in. One letter mentions a ruined harbor in the Far East, with carvings that match the mural you saw beneath the jungle island. Another talks about a language that might predate Sumerian, scratched into coral tablets off the coast of Zanzibar. Another comes with a map, unlabeled, unfinished, but in one corner is a symbol, a wave wrapped around an eye. You've seen it before. Quirky tidbit. Some modern scholars believe that the voyages of Sinbad were inspired by real Indian Ocean navigation, but folded through centuries of storytelling into something mythic, symbolic, recursive. A man who keeps voyaging, not because he must, but because he can't not. You sit by the window and hold the map against the lamplight. You trace the wave with your thumb, and you smile. Because you know where you're going next. You don't announce your next departure. No parade, no dinner parties, no grand tales to pass around the tea stalls. Just a quiet morning. A single pack slung over your shoulder, and boots that feel too familiar with the dirt paths leading towards the docks. The sea smells stronger than ever, sharper, somehow. You pause at the edge of the pier, fingers brushing the rolled-up map beneath your cloak. The wave wrapped around the eye. It's burned into your memory now. You don't need to look to find it. Your new ship is small, efficient. No cargo hold for trade, no ostentatious carvings or ceremonial drums. Just a fast hull and a captain named Gibran, who speaks in half sentences and watches the stars more than the compass. He doesn't ask why you're traveling. You appreciate that? The crew's a mix of seasoned sailors and wide-eyed youths chasing something they can't name. You recognize that look. It's the same one you had on your first voyage. A mix of hope, fear, and the thrill of stepping outside the known world. The wind favors you early. Sails fill, ropes sing, and for a few days, it feels almost too easy. Too calm, which, of course, means trouble is just beyond the horizon. On the fifth night, a storm hits. Not with warning, not with rumbling drama, but all at once. The sea rises like a hand, slapping the ship sideways. You're thrown against a crate. Blood in your mouth. The sky flashing like a strobe. Waves crash over the deck. Sailcloth rips. Gibran shouts something in a language you don't recognize. Might not even be a language. The ship groans. Bones of wood protesting each blow. You've weathered storms before, but this one feels personal. You clutch the mast, eyes narrowed into the wind, and see a shape in the distance, through the sheets of rain and lightning. An island? A shadow? No. A structure? Something built. Not ancient stone, not jungle ruins. This looks modern, metal. A tower rising out of the sea itself, impossibly tall, with windows that reflect no light and stairs that spiral downward into nothing. And just like that, the storm stops. Not fades, stops. Like someone turned it off. The sea smooths, the wind dies, and the ship, though damaged, floats gently toward the tower. No one speaks. Gibran grips the rudder with white-knuckled hands and mutters, "That place wasn't there yesterday." You believe him? Mainstream historical fact. In certain parts of the Indian Ocean, sailors told tales of moving islands, places that would vanish and reappear, sometimes made of stone, sometimes metal, sometimes mist. Modern scholars dismiss these as hallucinations. But satellite scans occasionally show temporary anomalies, reef formations rising and disappearing. No explanation sticks. You dock. There's a platform. Metal. Silent. No guards. No doors. Just stairs descending into the sea. Because of course they do. You descend. The metal is cold under your fingers. The walls hum. Not mechanically, but like they're breathing. Lights flicker in slow patterns. Not quite regular. Like Morse code written by someone who only learned half the alphabet. You descend for what feels like hours, and then you emerge into a chamber. It's underwater, but you're dry. A dome surrounds you. Beyond the transparent walls, fish drift past ancient machines. Coral clings to what might be statues, or people. In the center of the chamber is a chair, not a throne, not a seat of power. A chair, waiting. You step closer. Inscribed into the floor are symbols. You recognize the wave, the eye, the phrase. He who sails once will sail again. You sit, and the chamber speaks. In light, images flicker around you. The first sailors, carved into cave walls, maps etched onto whale bones, cities built on moving tectonic plates, towers razed and abandoned, visions of you, again, older, younger, laughing, screaming, sailing, sinking. You are one of many, a thread woven through each voyage. Sometimes Sinbad, sometimes not, but always returning. You don't know how long you sit there. Time seems thinner here. Finally, the lights fade. A hatch opens. You stand, legs trembling, and walk back to the stairs. When you emerge, it's morning. The sea is still. The tower is gone. Gibran's ship floats nearby, anchored down, sails still tattered but holding. You swim to it. The crew hauls you aboard like a ghost. They ask no questions, and you give no answers. Just, let's go east, because that's where the next story waits. Quirky tidbit. There's a theory in fringe circles that Sinbad's tales are not sequential, but circular. That each voyage is a reflection of a former one. That you're not reading them in order, because time itself in these stories doesn't obey the same tide. And sitting on the deck, soaked, tired, map in your lap, and the sea humming softly beneath you. You believe it. The days blur again. But differently now. Like the horizon itself is slowing down for you. Every sunrise feels like a soft knock on your soul. A reminder that you're not quite done, not quite home, not quite anywhere, and every night, the stars above seem to align just slightly out of pattern, like the sky is waiting for you to notice something you've been ignoring all your life. You sail east, always east, past small islands that don't appear on any chart, past atolls shaped like spirals, past birds with feathers the color of spilled ink, who watch you and don't blink. Gibran grows quieter the farther you go. You're not sure if he's afraid or in awe, but the crew follows his lead. No more idle chatter, just the sound of rope and sail, sea and breath. On the 11th day, a storm appears. Not a storm of wind and wave, those you're used to. This one is of sound, a low hum, like a city sighing beneath the sea. It starts as a vibration in the hull, then rises through the deck, into your bones. Your teeth chatter, the compass spins, birds vanish, even the clouds pause, like they're listening. And then you see it, rising from the water like the top of a drowned bell, a ring-shaped island. Perfectly circular, stone walls just breaching the surface. Inside the ring, the water glows faintly blue, like moonlight trapped below. You anchor outside the ring, you row in alone. Inside the circle, there's no sound, not silence, something more, an absence. You glide across water smoother than glass, approaching a platform in the center. It holds nothing, no throne, no temple, No bones, just a single column etched with familiar markings. The wave, the eye, the phrase. The sea always remembers. But this time, a second phrase beneath it, added later. You are its voice. You place your hand on the column, and suddenly it all unfolds. You see it, the full map, not just ports and islands, but every voyage you've taken, every landfall, every storm, every creature, every trade, every lie, every truth, all the things you forgot, all the versions of you that made it farther, or turned back, or never left at all. It's not your life, it's the sea's story, told through you, and you are still writing it. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient maritime traditions often told of wayfarers of memory, sailors who weren't just explorers but keepers of collective experience. They'd pass on warnings, blessings, omens, coded songs passed from one mouth to the next over generations. You're not sure how long you stand there, but eventually, you row back to the ship. Your crew watches you board. They don't ask what happened. They just raise the sails and adjust course. West now. You feel it, something pulling you home. The return voyage is strangely fast. Not rushed, but efficient. Like the sea is done with its part and now simply returning you. You arrive in Basra days ahead of schedule. You step off the boat like a man stepping out of a dream. You walk the streets. They feel more solid now. People more real. You don't stop at your house. Instead, you go to a scribe. You sit, you write. Everything. Your voyages. The tower. The underwater dome. The scroll. The dreams. The versions of you that spoke different languages. The ones that drowned. The ones that sailed farther. You hand him the pages. Make copies, you say. But not too many. He nods. You leave. And for the first time in years, you don't look back at the sea. Not out of fear, out of respect. Quirky tidbit. In medieval ports like Basra, it was believed that if a sailor told their story 3 times, it became part of the city's memory. No longer just a tale, it became lore. Something inherited. You wonder how many times you've told yours, and how many more still wait. That night, you sit on your rooftop under the stars. You don't dream of sailing. You dream of silence. And you smile, because now you understand it. It's been weeks now. You haven't stepped on a boat. You haven't even walked by the docks. The salt in your lungs is finally fading. The calluses on your hands are softening. The diamonds you once clutched like lifelines, tucked away in a cloth bundle at the bottom of a drawer, you never open. You're still in Basra. A man of means, a man of stories, and everyone wants to hear them. They visit your courtyard with wide eyes and clay mugs. Merchants, poets, bakers, sailors, all ages. They sit on your cushions and beg, "Tell us about the giant." Or, "Was it true about the Valley of Snakes?" Or sometimes just, "What was it like?" You tell them, most of it. You offer just enough to leave their mouths open and their tea forgotten. But the truth, the real shape of what happened, is yours, locked somewhere deeper than your words can reach. Some nights, you write. You sit by the window and scribble fragments, a symbol you saw on a coral wall, a phrase from a dream, the look in Gibran's eyes when the storm stopped too suddenly. You write, and then you burn half of it. Some stories are meant only for fire. Other nights, you lie awake, listening to the breeze rustling the fig tree outside. It sounds almost like sails flapping in the wind. Almost mainstream historical fact. The real Sinbad, or the traders who inspired him, likely existed during the Abbasid Caliphate in a golden age of exploration. Ships departed from Basra, Oman, and India, bringing back spices, gems, maps, and myths. The line between truth and tale was thin, and most preferred it that way. One morning, you wake before the sun. No reason. You dress slowly, walk to the roof, and watch the first light spill across the city. And that's when you feel it. Not a pull, not a yearning, just a knowing that something has shifted again. Maybe you won't sail tomorrow, maybe not next week, But one day, the sea will send another invitation. Not in words, in weather, in tides, in a breeze that smells just slightly wrong for the season. You'll recognize it, and you'll go, because you are not retired. You're simply between chapters. You spend the rest of the day in the market, buying olives, arguing about bread prices, laughing with a potter who insists you once sold him a snake tooth for 4 coppers. You didn't, but it makes a good story. You come home with warm dates, a basket of figs, and a new quill. That night, you write a letter. To no one, or maybe to yourself. You fold it neatly and place it under a heavy stone beside your bed. It reads, "If you find this, and if the sea has called you, go, and tell her I remember." Quirky tidbit. In some oral traditions, Sinbad was said to have lived many lives, each one beginning and ending with a different voyage. But it was always the same soul, learning the ocean in 1,000 different ways. You like that idea. You're still learning. The wind picks up, and somewhere, far off, a sail unfurls. Now, take a slow breath. Let it out even slower. You're back home now, safe, warm, and a little heavier with wonder. The sea has gone quiet. The sails have been furled, and the strange islands, the glowing towers, the serpents and thrones, they've slipped beneath the horizon of your mind, where dreams curl up and rest. Feel the ground beneath you, steady, unlike the ship. Let your shoulders drop, let your jaw soften. You've traveled far tonight, across oceans, through storms, down staircases that led into the bones of forgotten cities. You've spoken old names. You've heard truths too large for daytime. But here in the dark, in the hush of your room, none of that needs explaining. Just remembering the air around you hums gently now, like the slow roll of waves on a night beach. Maybe you can even hear it. Hush, hush, as if the sea itself is tucking you in. Whatever version of you stepped aboard that ship at the start, they've changed, grown, softened, and maybe, just maybe, prepared for one more adventure, whenever it comes. But for now, stay still, float in this moment. You're safe, you're home, and you're exactly where you're meant to be.